In this lecture, we'll explore another type of loop in JavaScript called for loop. At first, the for loop might look a little bit trickier than the while and do while loops you learned earlier, but for loop does the same thing just differently. Like the other loops you learned about, for loops are frequently used for actions that need to run a particular number of times, like 10, 20, 30, 100 or more. The for loop is a more compact variation of the while loop with similar parts. And it's really useful when you exactly know how many times you want to repeat an action. So let's start by comparing a while loop to a for loop. Say you have a while loop that displays the number from 0 to 9 to the console. You start with a variable named counter that's declared outside of the while statement. At the beginning of the loop, the JavaScript engine compares the value in the counter variable to 10. If the value assigned to counter is less than 10, the loop runs. At the start, counter is set to 0. Yes, 0 is less than 10, so the loop runs. The loop displays the current value assigned to the counter variable to the console, then increases the value of the counter by 1. After going through the loop 10 times, the counter value is set to 10, the condition is false, and the loop ends. Now let's look at the same looping behavior with the for loop. Notice that it's more compact, 3 lines of code, as opposed to the 5 lines for the while loop. That's one of the reasons why for loops are more often used. Okay, let's look at an example. To code along with me, first download the course folder from the link in the description below and open it with your favorite code editor. Here I'm using Visual Studio Code. From the course folder, open the exercise folder called JavaScript Loops. And then open the index.html file using Google Chrome. Here I also open the JavaScript console. In the index.html file, remember to link forloop.js file. In forloop.js file, I already put the generate random number function we wrote from the previous lecture. I'll start by typing the for keyword, followed by a set of parentheses, and set of curly braces. This block of code creates a loop that consists of 3 expressions which all go inside the parentheses and are separated by semicolons. The first expression is the initial declaration of the counter variable. It's the same as in the while loop. So I'll just copy this and place it as the first expression inside the parentheses. This part of the loop is evaluated or runs only once before the loop begins. Next comes the condition, which matches the same condition used in a while loop. In this case, its counter is less than 10. The condition gets evaluated before the loop runs each time, just like in a while loop. The last expression of the for loop updates the counter each time through the loop. That's this part of the while loop. And like a while loop, this expression gets evaluated and the counter is updated at the end of each loop iteration. Earlier you learned about the increment operator, which is a shorthand operator you use to increment a number value by 1, so you can make this even more compact like this. Finally, the code block represents the loop itself. It's the code that runs each time the condition evaluates to true. So inside the curly braces, I'll display the random numbers returned by the generate random number function in the console. I'll save the change, refresh the page, and there are my 10 random numbers in the console. For loops are common, you'll see them just about everywhere in JavaScript. To make them even easier to write, most programmers use a single letter to represent the counter variable like this. Keep in mind that it's best to use a variable name that's just a single letter with a for loop only. Variable names should usually be descriptive, but in this case, all the variable does only act as a counter in a for loop, so it's okay. In fact, the letters I and J are commonly used for variable names inside of loops. While the structure of a for loop may look a bit strange right now, after some practice, you'll find that they're really easy to write.